Okay, yeah, welcome to the Tuesday, February 14th of 2023 meeting of the Board of Commissioners for the Albany Housing Authority. Board members present, Linda Connor Mitchell, Mark Box Simple, Pastor David Train, and myself, Kelly Kimbrough, along with staff on the Housing Authority, Executive Director Chiquita Diarbo, Brian Primer, our General Counsel, Cheyenne Spotto, our Chief of Staff, as well as Adam Muller, support staff, and along with Claudia Rees. I think that's her name, right? To start the meeting off, we also have a few guests here who can introduce themselves when they speak. We'll start off the meeting with the community forum, under which the topic of the tourism. And so also I left off and I forgot we had some folks joining us here virtual. We have a number of virtual attendants. I don't have all the names, so I'll just point out that we have some folks attending virtually. With that, we will start with the list first. Okay, list of speakers. We'll have Mr. Aaron Cooper. How you doing, Mr. Cooper? We can't hear you, Mr. Cooper. Is the bar then? Oh, good.
He's talking, but
Mr. Cooper, we can't hear you.
If you can hear us, raise your hand.
He's got to be muted right there.
Can you hear us? Raise your hand. Which mic are we talking to?
Can you hear me?
yes.
You still can't hear me.
No, we can hear you.
I just heard you.
Yes, we can hear you, Mr. Cooper.
I got to do what?
You may speak. You can speak now, sir. You got 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, and I'll try to be as quick, as brief as possible. I appreciate you guys taking a moment to hear me out. I did mention the 2 concerns, and the first one was the radiators in all of the apartments at Robert Whalen Apartments. I just had a contractor after last year. My daughter, I'm a single parent of an autistic young lady. She had seizures every day because it was 15 degrees in my apartment. In order to rise above that 15 degrees, I had to buy plug-in heaters, which is hazardous, and we survive off of the oven. It's a quick question, and I don't need an answer, but is it appropriate to heat an apartment with your oven, to rely on heating an apartment with your oven? The second issue with the radiators is the windows. Part of why we're all cold at Robert Whalen Apartments, all the customers / tenants, we're cold. We were cold for Christmas. We were cold for New Year's. And I suppose I'm the only one that has the chutzpah to speak up. Of course, this is a major overhaul job to have to deal with all the radiators that's adjacent to the walls of all the apartments. They're insufficient heating. It's like 4% of the heat you get out of these radiators. Again, it's like 15 degrees in all apartments if you don't use your oven to survive. I was hoping maybe someone can stage a complete inspection of all the apartments for the sake of the customers and the tenants to prevent any more of our babies freezing every year. Tony is fully aware. I've spoken to Mark. At this point, the contractor came in my apartment and he did his level best, but it's an obsolete equipment. That's the problem in all of these buildings. And bleed in them or trying to repair them. They simply need to be replaced. We got a daycare on the premises. The kids in the daycare are freezing every day. Somebody needs to look into this. My second concern, and I'll let you guys go, is I was terminated from Section 8. And of course, I don't think I would have much of a problem with that if it was proper termination. But my complaint is Nancy, who's a Section 8 supervisor, and Sabrina, who was my worker for 15 years. These ladies should be terminated because they gang up.
I'm gonna have to cut you off. We can't hear you, you're muted. We can't, no, you're muted on our end. You're allotted 2 minutes. And the thing is, if I allow you to go over, there are other folks that want to speak also, so I can't do that. I'm assuming that the papers that we have in front of us also contain your public comment, so we'll have a discussion offline, and someone will get back. We'll follow up with you. Okay. All right. So I can't read that.
But thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Okay, so okay, next public speaker is here in the room with us, and
Monique.
Can you say your name?
Monique Below.
Okay.
I guess we're here because of time that was supposed to be placed down at 280 for my mom. It was supposed to be at Elizabeth Blues Way. We've been dealing with this over 2 years just before Steve Longo left. I think at that point she was taking over. We had got so far as that we've seen the sign. We've seen it all. We were only at a point of waiting for the mayor to set a date for us to do the little ceremony and have the sign put up. Well, from that point, I've never been able to get anywhere else. COVID came and all of that, we've never been able to get anywhere else with this sign. And I was also under the impression that we were trying to have the building named after my mom. I don't know how far we got with that, or if that's even possible. But if there anybody can get any information on what's going on.
Okay, I can, well, this part of the meeting isn't usually a back and forth to take public comment. So I'm gonna have to talk to you about that offline. I was intimately involved with those discussions. The mayor wouldn't have to do it. It's within the housing authority. I did take the steps as a council member to do some stuff with 911 in the streets. But that's as far as we've gotten. I don't believe from the last administration that communication was such that it needed to be to make this happen. And so I think that's the hang up. It's just a matter of talking through some stuff and trying to work it out. I already said too much because I'm interacting with you and I'm not supposed to during this part of the meeting, but we can. I didn't know what you were going to say, or I would have said something outside before you got here. I mean, I knew what you were going to say, but I didn't. So, all right.
So let me ask.
Why don't we just talk? This is.
I just want to know, will you have the answers or do I need to?
Well, it's a combination. Oh, it's not just me.
Like,
Rolling limbo.
message with Claudia. He's extremely busy.
Okay,
This is what brought me to the meeting because I can't keep no call back, no nothing.
okay.
Right.
So we'll talk about that offline because it's part of the meeting. So, Steve, I'll come into that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, so we'll give it time.
Thank you.
Do we have any of the folks online slated to speak or no?
So you have Regina Jew down, she's not on.
Decided we handled it, we did concern, it wasn't a board related
Gotcha.
or even a house.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay. With that, we will consider community forum part of the meeting forward. Move on to the rest of the agenda. All right, so on to item number 3, approval of minutes from previous meeting. offering, January 10th, 2023 meeting minutes. For approval.
Make that motion. Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays, abstentions, no? Okay, it passes. Motion passes. Okay. Next on to our action calendar, we'll have, 2/23/05 resolution authorizing the transfer of 832 Manning Boulevard at the City Hall and authorizing the executive director to sign a deed and related transfer documents. And staff.
Absolutely. This is actually, part of the IDR Road phases. This is what we call phase 3 of IDR Road, and, the actual, project actually started prior, with my predecessor. We, identified some, documents and conveyance approvals that was necessary in order to complete this process, in order to convey it to, Habitat for Humanity and the Albany County Land Trust for homeownership opportunities. So basically, this resolution is to allow me to complete that process, to complete the conveyance of that property so that they can start that homeownership project.
There'll be a total of six units overall, 3 buildings, 2 units per building. Just from the kind of timing perspective, the expectation, the hope is that we're kind of still getting over a couple of typical title related issues that take a little bit of straightening out. And the hope would be that by late March, April, we have a closing, transfer of the property, and then the construction would start almost immediately thereafter.
Your cost of call.
No loss.
Okay. Right, so that, there's no purchase price.
No purchase.
Understood.
Okay, so any discussion from board members? All right. Okay, motion,
I'll make that motion.
motion from Mark, second. This matter. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion passed.
Anyone opposed?
Anyone opposed in the name of opposition? We're all. Okay, moving on, okay, we're on to the committee reports, portion of the meeting, and please, well, do you have any, reports from your committee?
None,
Okay, yeah,
still
yeah.
looking at, adjusting the time frame, for public comments,
Yeah.
But I want Mr. Rodriguez to know that we haven't forgotten that.
Okay. And. Bob Central?
Yeah, so the FSS crew is still,
And this is program committee, right?
yes, sorry, yes, program committee.
And you speak to what MSS is, so that
Absolutely not, you can, but
it's in your report.
the Family Self-Sufficiency Participation Program, which is up and running. We've got 3 staff that's running it. They're hosting a few open houses. We held them at some of our sites. Get some testimonies from folks and stuff like that. You want to add anything more to that?
I'm just gonna keep what's here because here. But really no. Okay, open house hotel with the current family self-sufficiency. 4 current family self-sufficiency participants in January. FSS participants met their new family self-sufficiency coordinators. They had food, refreshments, they spoke about their experiences. and heard from testimony from former, FSS graduate, which was myself. Which was a great experience. It was nice talking to those who are currently participants on the program and highlighting my experiences and, just encouraging those who are participants to, stay focused and to, work with their coordinators towards their goals. So I thought that was a great, opportunity. Just for those who don't know, who are listening, the Family Self-Sufficiency Program is only for Section 8 and public housing, residents living, either in our property or on the section. So it's not an open community, grant funded, opportunity, only grants it for the residents and participants of the program.
So, and maybe I missed it, so the family self-sufficiency program, the goal is to,
So basically, it's to help families, individuals become self-sufficient. And it's really based on their own personal goals. So typically what happens is when you meet with a caseworker, if you have an interest, you meet with the caseworker and you state, you kind of outline what your hopes and dreams are, so to speak. So if you're not currently actively employed, that might be a goal of yours. If you're looking to seek certifications or higher education degrees, that might be a goal of yours. If you're looking to improve your credit, and thus finally becoming a homeowner, that might also be your goal, but it's all based on the individual's needs and their goals. And what that counselor basically does is sets out those goals and helps you tap into the resources to help you towards meeting those goals. And it's typically over a period of 5 years. Within that 5 years, say that you increase your earned income, for an example. One of the incentives in that program is that it creates what we call a escrow account, which then the difference in what you were paying for rent and what you're now paying for rent becomes part of a savings account. You still pay that portion, but there's also a set aside of a savings account on your behalf. For a quick example, say you were paying, you weren't paying any income, any rent, and then you enrolled in the Family Self-Sufficiency Program. You became employed, and let's just say your portion was $100. So each month, $100 would go into an escrow account on your behalf. Then if the next year it went up to $200, so then an additional $100 will go into that escrow. I have signed checks for as high as $45,000 or more, depending on, again, it's all based on the individual. So it's a great program. It does have a cap. And right now our staff are working on just seeing who's currently on the program, making sure that they're actually, because HUD actually had us write a brand new action plan. And so technically it started back up in September. And we started working with the current participants to see how many additional slots we have right now. But they're actively recruiting once we know the status of the current participants and cleaning out the old files from the contracted agency that ran that program for many, many years. We have decided to bring it in-house.
Yeah, how many families or people are?
So under public housing, we're probably close to 270.
Really?
Yeah, close to it. It's not exact.
That's about
that's-
2%.
yeah. And then in public housing, I think we might be maybe a little under 100. Again, they're cleaning. We had, a company run that program for so many years. So we're going through every file to make sure that they're active. And making sure exactly how many people we actually have. So they're working through that and almost to completion. Oh, actually, the program is actually being operated and administered out of 200 South Green Street, 200 Green Street. Most people might have referenced it as the Wage Center, which it has not been called the Wage Center for probably a good 15-20 years, but people still reference it that. Because if anyone remembers what the Wage Center used to be, it used to be kind of a one-stop shop and we had multiple agencies at that site. And then my predecessor decided to contract it to one organization who kind of did more of an intimate assistance. It wasn't necessarily, it was not in the capacity that the original intent of the Wage Center was going to be, so we thus named it the center. That's what all our documents state. What we are trying to do when I decided to bring everything back in-house and hire staff to actually administer the 2 programs that HUD grants us, also looking to bring in various organizations that can provide resources to not just our residents, but the community at large that decides to stop in. So we're trying to make it more of an open environment. The Section 8 waiting list is still closed, yes. We're working through it. We've had some challenges. We've changed the way that we do. COVID kind of put a damper on our interaction and one-on-one. We've been having briefings once a week. We've been sending out mailings constantly, and for those who don't respond, our staff are now picking up the phone and calling people to making sure that they got the mail, because we know that there have been a lot of issues with the mail in the post office. And unfortunately, our address here and along, I want to say Green Street is what they call a training neighborhood or area, right? So the carrier changes almost daily, if not weekly. So you can't, it's so unreliable to the point where we've had to go and pick up our mail sometimes. So it has been, so it has been a challenge. So now it's been happening for quite some time now. We pick up the phone, we try to send a text. We try to make sure that we reach out to make sure that they got the paperwork. Yeah, so the response has been great so far. Yeah.
So thank you.
You're welcome.
Pretty good explanation for the description of the program. So
Absolutely.
I believe we're through the committee reports.
One more, they just had a question, the office hours, button only registration requirement.
I can't,
They want to know if the office hours for the center, and an appointment only or registration required.
We'll put the phone number in
Okay.
the chat. We'll put the phone number in the chat. The one thing I did want to add that did not make the report, and I'm not quite sure, but it wasn't really the housing authority. We communicated with the agency, but it wasn't, well, it was, let me just say this. The housing authority was a partner in actually placing the first period pantry in the city of Albany, which is located in front of 200 Green Street. Anyone, it's a little red box. It's actually really, I will share the news clipping of when it was became live, or when it was shared with the news. Channel 10 did a coverage on it. But we have the first in the city of Albany. So the first one that they did, I want to say, was in Schenectady, and then ours was the second. So that was great news. One other thing is there was, and I'm gonna probably need my phone because I'm not going to say it correctly, but under the Denise and Warren Mackey Foundation, there was a there is, and I think this is very important to mention even during this meeting, so that for those who are here listening can also hear this opportunity, because it is important. If you bear with me, I'm trying to pull it up. And okay, so it's called Heart of Hope, and there's free health screening offered at Albany Med Center from February 1st to April 15th. There's free screening. You don't need health insurance. They consult with you to determine which screening are appropriate. It goes from either screening for breast, lung, prostate, skin, color, colon, and cervical cancer. And they will assist without health insurance. I will mention it's actually up on our Instagram page, but the phone number is 518-285-0717. Why do I mention this? I mention this because when we have the capacity to send out text messages, emails, and phone calls to our residents. And when Denise Mackey, told an organization in which another organization in which I belong to about this opportunity, I told her, this will be great for us to share with our residents. So we did just that, and I was just informed just this past weekend that out of 50 calls that they received, 38 of them were our residents. And that means that we are saving lives, which is so important. We'll continue to support this initiative up until the deadline. But, you know, this is what we try to do when we partner with other organizations. So I just thought that it was very important to mention at this board meeting.
Good work. Okay, and so, moving on from the, committee reports to reports, the executive secretary.
That's me again. Well, other board members received all reports, monthly financial reports, operations, risk and lease enforcement, personnel report, program reports, and court proceedings reports. They are all attached. There are some highlights I would like to just touch on, one being the financial report. Actually, it combines with the financial report and I would just say probably court proceeding reports. As you know, the Housing Authority has been facing a huge issue with residents paying rents. We've plateaued to a consistent accounts receivable to exceed at least $2.8 million on a monthly basis. Any organization that is behind in that amount of money, you know, has to kind of reassess what it does and how it functions, because those monies we rely on to go to those developments, to make the repairs, unexpected repairs, to do upkeeps, rehabs, whatever is necessary at that site. But not to affect the day-to-day operations of the organization. But to be behind $2.8 million and be consistent in that money's owed, in addition to, you know, it doesn't help that other individuals are not encouraged to pay their rent or not encouraged to stay current on their rent or even not encouraged to communicate with us at times. So I think, you know, this has set the stage for these challenges. But in that same, as I speak to that, you know, there has been misinformation put out there. And, you know, I want to go on record that it has been under 100 people that were actually removed from their homes, evicted, I should say that, through the court proceeding. And I will say it was no one that has showed up to court or responded to our effort. It was people that either skipped units. It was either drug or criminal related activity, so for cause. So it was anyone who responded to our efforts, and what I mean by efforts is not just, you know, processing. I'm talking about staff picks up the phone, staff knocks on doors, even after the 14-day warrant is issued. We knock on doors, we give resources, we make every single effort to work with our families. So I just wanted to go on record again, but yet and still, it's still a challenge for us to collect our rent at $2.8 million and being behind. So I also say that to say a lot of organizations in the community rely on us and ask for us and have done so in over the years to help them support their community and organization efforts in many ways. We really are taking a look at all of that because we may need to take a hiatus in supporting until we can get back on track. There's no other way to figure it out. I have to, you know, I look at the atrium and see that there's new seatings that's needed, you know, for people who are waiting to be seen, rather than waiting for the sitting in the folding chair. You know, you want a welcoming environment, but I have to assess what is our priority, and that's really making sure that we are providing the best customer service that we can, and ensuring that, you know, anyone who walks through the door has a welcoming feel, and that means taking a look at those seatings. So that means that some of these additional discretionary funds that we have to go focus on that and the needs of our residents, and the needs of our employees. So that being said, for the most part for this year, we may have to take a look of not supporting any programs for at least a year. We could reassess it as things start and hopefully may improve, but right now we just don't see any way out from up under here. It's going to take us years to recover. $2.8 million that, I think was, for whatever reason, didn't get paid, but, these are the hard decisions that we have to make.
And we're not the only housing authority.
We are not, it is across the state of New York. However, if you go to another state, they didn't have the moratorium, they didn't have the extension of the moratorium like we did. They didn't have, individuals of, certain statute, telling people not to pay their rent. They had people more or less encouraging them to pay if they didn't have a change in the income or if they were not directly affected by COVID. But unfortunately, we didn't have that support. So at this point, we just have to make the best of where we are and make these hard decisions.
Oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I bring that up only to say this is not something that all the housing is doing because we want to be.
It's not unique though.
It's not unique to the housing authority, no,
No.
but I can tell you that what's unique about us is that we support a lot of organizations out here that many, and I've come from 2 other housing authorities, and I can tell you that they did not and do not support organizations in the manner in which we do. So this is why I'm taking a look at that. Other housing authorities may not have that option because that's not what they do in the first place. They just stick to we're landlords and that's what we do, because that's what we are. We opt to be more than just housing, but we don't have to.
2 things. Previously, you had mentioned the possibility of the federal government getting involved, or your organization, the housing consortium around the nation was going to get together and appeal to the government. That's under one of the second part is this the reason these 100 people that were evicted, is that the reason why our vacancy rate appears to be a little bit higher? And on this particular document, the vacancies, it might be a good idea to put in the amount that we're down, or the amount that we're up, because it does seem to be a lot higher, the vacancy rate.
So, Pastor, what you're looking at is the report that we pull out, that we have to upload to us. So that's probably why you don't see that balance on there, but we can make those changes. What you see to the left of you is the actual balance, I believe.
Right, this one?
No,
Or this?
right there, I believe.
Gotcha.
So to answer your question, yes, I've actually sat on panels of various organizations that represent housing authorities as a whole. I've attended meetings. We're all trying to make efforts to try to find ways that we can be not so much made whole. What happens is housing authorities are graded by their ability to collect their rent, their efforts to collect their rent, and where their bottom line stands. We're graded by that. So if we were graded by the $2.8 million right now, we will be considered a failing or standard performer, as opposed to us being a high performer, which we have been for many, many years. So those efforts, along with my fellow colleagues, we have been pushing hard to not grade us and to waive that portion of the grade, because these are things that have been 100% out of our control. We've made every effort to, to try to collect the monies even prior to the moratorium, and even prior to during COVID, we foreseen, the balance increasing, where we contracted with United Tenants. We gave them $50,000, asked them to go to their various sites to help us with the families that were falling behind, to help them, counsel them, to encourage them to understand that if they are not impacted by COVID, that they were still responsible to pay their rent, because we did not want to have to send hundreds of thousands of letters every, over the year. Well, not hundreds of thousands, but I misspoke, I apologize. We did not want to send thousands of letters to families saying you owe this amount. That's stressful. We were trying to prevent that. But unfortunately, the forces were working against us. That being said, those again are things that were out of our control, and we're trying to help understand. We're talking to them to understand that these are things that were out of our control. We sent a letter. We're waiting to see what the results are going to be. We continue to advocate for our housing authority and others to help them understand the situations that we're in, because even with the law, the tenant protection law that passed prior, just before COVID started, what was it about, about just
8, 9, 10 months.
yeah, every month, that has increased our expenses by at least $27,000 just to process. And it's increasing because the more families that owe us is the number of families that we have to serve, which we have to pay. That's the 5-day, that's the mailings, that's everything. So, helping them understand the impact that it has had on us as well, so that, you know, because financially, when you have those impacts, it affects how we provide our service. To mention in terms of the vacancies, some of those vacancies that you see are studios. People just don't want to rent studios. We have a huge challenge with that. Some of it is, you know, locations that people just don't want to live at. It's the neighborhood. These are the top 2 reasons why you see those vacancies. So it becomes very difficult for us to fill those units. When we have units, before we even have vacancies, we have families in files, right, waiting for units. So we do pre-eligibility, everything prior to even vacancies available. But, you know, it's the family's option to take the unit or not. So there's a lot of the vacancies that you see are those reasons.
Gotcha.
And behind that, I've had conversations with HUD, several conversations on maybe alternative uses for some of those units that remain vacant, maybe allowing an agency to come in and provide a service at that site or something, and use maybe one of those units as an office, similar to why you see some organizations that are in single operating out of there, because some of the units are not rentable. Well, not rentable, but you know, we just
Hard time to fill it.
you found alternatives.
Going forward, one of the concerns is having possibly 4-unit apartments.
Or bedroom units.
Yes, and is there anything in the pipeline to try to address that going forward? I know that's not wholly on our shoulders,
Correct.
you know, to try to do something like that, but it's just a question to see if there's something that's in the pipeline, maybe in one of the remodels that's going to be coming up, you know, because they're constantly remodeling places, knocking on the wall, making an extra bedroom, it's just a thought, and you don't have to
I'm okay
come
with
up
it.
with anything you don't want to.
Okay with the response, and thank you for the question. I would say to you that historically, since I've been here from 1999, we've never had a lot of 4 or 5 bedrooms. Understanding that's a need, and it's been a need in the throughout the entire community. But immediately at this point, we don't have immediate plans. However, right now, our focus is our current stock, maintaining it and keeping it, you know, what's the word, attractive. So as you know, we're currently working on 20 Rensselaer. We'll start our phase 2 and work on the rest of Steamboat. And then we're gonna move on to other properties that have been here, built, and needs attention. I can't tell you for sure if in those plans, the 4 or 5 bedrooms will be, within those plans. It depends on the configuration and the architect's ability to make those changes if necessary. But what I can promise you, I will keep that in mind and do what we can when we can. We do have scattered sites out there that have 4 and, you know, 3 and 4 bedrooms, not so many 5, but 3 and 4 bedrooms that are on 3rd Street. There's Sheridan and Ontario, sorry. So we do have larger units, but the thing is, when you find larger units, most of the time families don't move out.
And do you think that the studio apartments, if they're like a block, since we're having a hard time renting them out, do you think that if we were to do something like that with those, that the families that have 4, you know, had the need of 4 or 5 bedrooms, that they would be more apt to go into them, but also the cost begins to come into play as well, because now they're going to be much more expensive.
Well, many of those units that you're identifying are in 55 and elderly disabled units, towers. and they're not conducive to families. So what we have done in the past in both towers, we have in several of the towers, we converted two studios into a one bedroom. We have done that. We can continue to look at that, but again, money is of the essence right now, so we can only do what we can.
Yes, that's.
We tried to change the floors to make it more attractive, so
And so on the.
Got it.
Studio conversation, so are we shopping or going further out on the list? And look at pulling families in, you can't do that.
so on this studio, only one person can stay there. So it's not, one person is a family in their own right. But we have sent out hundreds. We've asked, hundreds of letters, and that's no exaggeration. People just don't want to. And it has been a challenge. And what we have found is when those who are in need, we, when I say need, they're homeless and, they're willing to accept anything. What we have found is 2 months later, I want a bed, a one bedroom. Which then you go on the transfer list after a year, so it takes time. So we have tried to ensure that, to tell them that, transfers don't happen right away. And once they do that, sometimes they don't want to take it either. We even do, Cheyenne just reminded me, we do robocalls. We've been doing robocalls and texts about the studio units and the hard to house units at other sites. Because we do have larger units that are hard to house, but it's because of the neighborhood, not so much the property.
Yeah, it's probably the question, but
Yeah.
in that instance where the person moves ahead, goes into the studio, then a short time later wants to go into one bedroom, they don't skip past the person that's already in line that's waiting for them.
Nope, they have to wait, and we have priorities.
Right.
Yes, we have a priority list.
Silly question.
Never a silly question.
Did you talk about getting towards the college students? I know you said because of the neighborhood, but where it is.
You still have-
Cause I know they're only here for a short time.
But many of this, so when you speak to college students, you're talking about putting college students into a building, in buildings that are mainly designated for elderly and disabled.
Why that's.
But for the young, no, those are the studios I'm referencing.
Oh,
Yeah, most of the studios are in those buildings.
Yes,
The little college parties.
no college.
They don't party anymore.
So,
That concludes my report. I have no additional comments.
Very good.
all right.
Thank you.
Yeah,
You're welcome.
so we're done. The Secretary reports, so we're going to item for a 5-minute discussion. Have anything?
I have none.
Don't have anything, okay, moving on, no executive session,
No.
so we're on to adjournment. Take a motion.
Quick return. Kind of, I missed a little bit, but I'm still trying to figure out how you just shut down on the name change of the streets not go.
No, then,
What I want to know, why is it not up here? Why is it not being recorded, everything that's going along that it's all about? And to me, it looks like what we're talking about on the side, if you have.
Yeah.
no, so somebody said this, so specifically, there are specific rules on how the meeting is run, that
Right.
particular community forum.
That was my
It's
next
to
question,
receive-
what was this actually about?
It's to receive comment from the community. It's not meant to be a back and forth discussion.
Okay, I don't know, I'm just sitting.
I mean, I've worked with this family over the years, I'm
I'm
not trying to run.
Being quiet, never sitting here saying.
So, yeah,
I'm not really sitting
so,
there.
yeah, we didn't just skirt over it, so, like is a motion to adjourn.
Motion made.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned.